Good evening. Excuse me. And Happy New Year. We have been gathered tonight to celebrate a beginning, a new beginning for us. For the past 16 years, I have given a talk around this time of the year, inviting people every year to stop and remember the goodness. And I'd like to start by remembering your goodness to me. And to thank all of you who send Christmas cards and gifts and lovely, lovely sayings. And I want to tell Jan that her runner for the table is gracing our table this year. And we are grateful to everyone, very much so, for supporting the ministry and helping me be able to continue. So when we open the door to the new year, well, we have to believe that on the other side of the door is Jesus. And he is extending his hand, inviting us in to walk with him, right? To have a new heart, maybe a softer, kinder heart to ourselves and to someone else. And just in case you forgot, I don't know how many of you really remember this, the church traditionally celebrated the Feast of the Epiphany on this day. And in many parts of the world, it's still celebrated today. Janet Meyer, been a long time. Welcome. And I chose to give my talk today because I love the Feast of the Magi, of the manifestation. What we're being told is on this day, the light came into the world, and this day it opened up to everyone. The Christ, the light of God, is now among us. Now, we call the Feast of the Three Kings. But really, they were not kings, they were magi. They were high priests, probably from Persia, which would be around the area of Iraq today. And they came to bring gifts. And what if there were more than three? Well, that's tough on a Christmas card to get more camels. But in the Eastern Orthodox Church, they believe there are 12. 12 magi. But I'm wondering where the three came from. And I think it's from the three gifts. But what if a couple of people went together on a gift? Right? And what's important is not the number, because they probably came with a whole caravan of people. What is important is that they traveled. They traveled. And in that, everyone was invited in to the Christ. I was reading a homily by a priest named Father Marsh these past days, and I was so captivated by it. What he suggested kind of rattled around in me and kind of moved around and then struck me right in the heart. Okay? And what he said is that we probably live our lives in a continuum of fear and hope. Fear on one side, hope on the other. And what we see in the three kings is that fear and that hope is being lived out because they traveled and they followed the star. They possibly were astronomers who studied the stars. But what they did when they got to Jerusalem is they went to Herod's house for directions. Bad idea, right? They went to Herod's house for directions. Now, you just don't get into Herod's house. So that tells us how important they are, right? And right there in that meeting and the aftermath of the meeting, we see how all of us probably live our lives. And we live our lives on that continuum between fear and hope. Just think about your own life for a minute. Right? The Magi set out not knowing where they were going. Now, how many of us do that? You can't even get away with it today with the GPS in the car. It's hard to even get lost and discover something new. Right? But they went on a mission of discovery to find the king. And what they had as their direction, their GPS, was the star. They followed the star. And it was the same star for everyone. But not everyone saw it. And they saw it because it had struck their hearts. They were moved in hope and so trusted and followed the star. Herod, on the other hand, Herod at this point was old, he was sick, and he was fearful of being overthrown by a new king. He was not open to the star. He probably didn't even recognize it. Maybe he didn't look up. How many of us, when we're out at night, look up to the sky? But people do put a star on top of their tree. We have one. Maybe you have one. And I believe that that star is to remind us to keep following the star. Keep feeling the longing within us for Christ. Now, I get a little crazy, maybe you do too, on December 6th when I go out and I'm driving. I see the Christmas trees outside, and I think to myself, oh boy, the tree's been thrown out, and the star is packed away. But you can pack it away, but it's still shining. The star of Christ is still shining. And it is lighting the way. It's lighting the way for all of us, not just the Magi. And that is the path of hope. Just think about it for a minute in your own life. When have you stopped and looked and paid attention? Now, in truth, the year we just left was particularly difficult, wasn't it? It was a tough time to walk in hope and not fear. It has been for me. I've been very fearful of the virus. And, I fill a category. I'm old, and I have some health issues. And I'm like, and they keep saying, stay home. And I want to say, and you going to come and take care of us? But we go because we're walking the path and we're not walking alone. Now, COVID is there and it's with us. But we move in hope. And then what happened a year ago today, it still terrifies me. I am terrified of what happened. And it could be because I taught history and government. And seeing people climb up on the building of the Capitol, it seared in me. Maybe you too. It seared in me. And I had to ask myself as I crossed the threshold into the new year, how can I walk through this year in hope? Even though there's been great difficulties, how can I walk in hope? Well, hope is not something you get. It doesn't come wrapped in a box. And we open it up and we have hope. No, hope is more like getting a gift card. Right? You got to do something about it. You got to participate in it. You got to move. Hope is a calling. It's a calling to us to move, to follow the star, to do something. Later in the Gospel of Luke, in chapter 21, Jesus is describing a very difficult time to come. And he tells the disciples, basically, I'm paraphrasing, this is in chapter 21, if you want to look at it, 25 to 36. I love when I do that. I feel like a Baptist preacher. He says, right in the middle of all of it, stand up and raise your head, Stand up and raise your head, even in the midst of it all. It is our participation in hope. Look up. Looking up is an act of hope. Even if we're touched by fear, it's okay. But get a new way, work on a new way of seeing in the new year. An eye to possibility. A number of years ago, I gave out something called a kaleidoscope. And what it is it's like a kaleidoscope, okay? This end. But when you look through it, on this end is a clear glass crystal. And what you're seeing is everything that's around you. But it's different, it's fractured, it's beautiful. Matter of fact, some of you stole them, I think. Right? But if you did, I hope you enjoyed it. I'm only kidding. I know you didn't, because I put something in them that would make them explode if you got outside the church with them. But what it does is it shifts our way of seeing. It shifts it. And it's never the same old, same old. I could look at the chandelier above me and then move to another seat. This is our dining room table. And move to another seat at the table. And I'd get a totally different view. It's not the same old, same old. Because when you're walking the path of hope, there's always a peaking of light. Something that breaks through and says, follow. Stand up, raise your head, and follow. Just since Christmas, Michelle, whom I live with, and I were talking about the peaks of light that we have experienced. Last week I was in the new Walmart by my house. You know how I love Walmart. I don't want to love it, but I do. I was in the new Walmart near my house, and I bought a few things, and I thought I had enough money. And I got to the register, and I was short 76 cents. And I really didn't want to take out the charge card after Christmas. And I said to the woman, I just don't have enough money. I had to put something back. And the woman behind me reached over on the line and handed me a $5 bill. I've done that myself, but it has never been done to me. And I was so touched by it. I said, I'll put it on a charge. She goes, no, please take it. I took it, I paid the bill, and I turned to give him back the money. And she said, why don't you just keep that? And I said, oh no, I just live right near here. I'm fine, thank you. And as I turned and looked at her, she had a mask on. And on the mask, it said, Spirit's Promise. Spirit's Promise. I looked at it, I almost burst out laughing. I was like, okay, I got it, right? And Michelle, she went to the King Cullen. And she went to the deli counter and ordered a few cold cuts, not much, right? And the man, now, this is the deli counter. Think about how many times you've been at a deli counter. The man walked around the counter to give her the cold cuts and then was pretty insistent that he carry her little basket, I guess it is, that she had on her lap, up to the front for her. And Michelle was like, no, I'm okay. He said, please, let me do it. Do you hear that? Peaks of light. And I have seen and experienced so many peaks of light from you this Christmas season. I got a beautiful card from a woman named Donna, whose husband that she was estranged from for many years became very ill. And she told me how she and her sons took care of him, and how good and kind that family was brought back together at the end of his life. Light breaking in. And then my dear Eileen, my artist, whose husband is so very ill, and right in the middle of it, and I forgot to bring it over, she painted me a beautiful little card. Light. Light. Thank you, Eileen. Hey, this is what I see along my journey that feeds my hope as I'm called to move in the path of hope. Now, there is nothing wrong with being fearful. It is human to experience fear, to be afraid. But it cannot be a way of life because we hold a treasure. St. Paul tells us we hold a treasure in earthen vessels. That's us. And that treasure is Christ the Lord. We are treasure carriers. Wow. We carry the treasure. And I was thinking about people that I've heard about or seen or know in these past days who really brought the treasure. And I remembered seeing something on a film from our community of two nuns, two sisters, who lived in, I believe, Michigan. And there was a big crackdown on illegal immigrants. And these men were gathered up and they were brought to a detention center. And the sisters heard it on the TV. Now, they lived a couple of blocks away. Not only were they nuns, they were also blood sisters. And one was 85, and the other, I believe, was 88. So they packed up their cell phones and a little food, and they walked over to that detention center, and they asked to see the men being held. And the Border Patrol pretty much told them, get out of here. So they came back the next day and heard the same message. So they were smart. And they said, well, we could come back after we get in touch with the Attorney General, and we could come back with an attorney, but these men have the right to care. Someone to care. Well, eventually, they let them in. And they cared for these human beings being held. And when two buses arrived, it's kind of funny, when two buses arrived to take the men back to the airport to be deported and separated from their families, the sisters were there with their cell phones. And then they were on the bus. They went to the airport. And what I heard later was one of the Border Patrol people said, listen, get in, my wife's picking me up, get in the car, we'll drive you back to the detention center. Hey, what a story. 85 and 88. Hope calls us to stand up and to raise our heads and do something. Something. Little things that are points of light in lives. You know, President George H. Bush, he started a program called 1,000 Points of Light. And when he talked about it, people kind of chuckled. Believe me, the Points of Light Foundation is still going on. People are volunteering, people are working, because in the darkness, there is nothing like seeing a light on. Bringing the light, the little things. And we do this because we are on the path of hope, walking with and to the light. We carry the light for other people in whatever darkness they're experiencing. Because we believe the future holds possibility of something other or something better. We can't just sit around, remembering the good old days and the past. And for many people, I think it's a past that never was. I will tell you, I never heard my mother say, boy, do I miss the days I had to carry a block of ice up 3 flights of stairs to the cold water flat. Or my dad saying, wow, I remember and I miss the days I had to carry garbage cans full of coal ash on my shoulder. He had an indentation in his shoulder from carrying coal ash. Now, yes, There are absolutely wonderful times that have passed, but they are not this time. Okay? And there is new possibility, a possibility of some wonderful times in the future. You know, I was listening to a late night comedian the other night, and he was interviewing somebody, and he said, if you had to listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be? I started to think about that. And I said, I think it would be Louis Armstrong singing What a Wonderful World. When Michelle and I cared for my grandniece Iris, and I know many of you knew Iris or met her along the journey, every morning I held that baby and I played that song and we danced. We danced. I wanted her to take something of the hope that I carry, that treasure, into her little body. And I look at her 14 years later, and I believe that she does carry something of it. Life is not George Bailey. And if you're too young to remember George Bailey, well, you can watch A Wonderful Life. It's on Netflix, right? It's a wonderful life. It is a wonderful life. When we stand up and raise our heads to see. It's up to us. The philosopher Kierkegaard wrote many wonderful, thought-provoking pieces, but he told a story that is so good. He's not a comedian, he was a philosopher, but he told the story about ducks. He said, well, the ducks waddled in, right? Their little marching waddle into church. And they all sat down to listen to the duck preacher speak. And the duck preacher went on and on and on about possibility and how ducks were made to fly. And you need to take what has been given to you and move with it as your calling. When the service was over, all the ducks waddled out of the church. And they said to each other, that was a wonderful sermon, wasn't it? It was just so inspiring. And then every one of them waddled home. Nobody flew. I was reminded of that story, and I saw an ad on TV. I have no idea what the ad is for. Believe me, I don't watch that much TV, but when I watch it, I'm watching, right? And I watch the ads. I have a few I love. The little girl in Montefiore Hospital with the unicorn, love it, right? This was the one of a grandmother. And her grandson must have been living with her, or she was caring for him. And she saw him on his phone, all the time on his phone. And she walked behind him and she looked at what he was doing. And he was playing some game about dragons. Then the next time she looked, he was playing chess on the phone. So she got an idea. Stand up. Raise your head. See. She went on Etsy and she ordered a chess set made out of dragon pieces. They were all dragons. She set it all up. She called her grandson in. And they sat down at that table and they played dragon chess together. I love that story. It's the possibility to relate. Where is the next generation and the generation after that and the generation after that going to get the treasure unless we carry it to them? I wanted to show you something. I've shown these maybe once before. Little shoes. There was a little baby 72 years ago, just about this time of the year, who took her first steps in these shoes. And they were a little discolored at the bottom. But when she took those steps, someone was holding her hands. We are now the hands of God. We are the hands of love. And we need to reach out to others. We can't hide. Don't put your light under a bushel basket. Help others see the light just by the way we live. In the small ways. The small, tiny ways. We carry the treasure. Don't cower in fear. It's up to us how we're going to live this time. In this time of our lives, this time of our world. The good people Michelle and I met over the past week and a half, those good people are everywhere. Even the gang kids. I go to a handy pantry up the block, and sometimes when I go there, it's a little scary because you got everybody hanging around outside. And boy, you know, I get out of the car, and they open the door for me, and I thank them, and I start talking to them, and they talk back. I was a little afraid. But where does fear get you? Stand up. Raise your head. Don't waddle. Don't waddle home. Fly. Follow the star, the light. And I can only ask you to reach out your hand. Reach out both of your hands and invite. Invite someone to the light. Offer them something of the epiphany. Let that light in you shine. I encourage you this year to be the person Christ is calling you to be in this time. Stand up, raise your head, and see, where does light need to go? And then you go. I hope that this year is a good one for you in your health, in your hope, in your heart. And in a few, maybe another week or so, I'll be sending out the programs I'm offering over the winter. I'm very sorry to say that they are going to also be online because it's not really safe for people to gather at this time. But do not let the sadness overpower you. Bring joy, find it deep in your heart, and then make it part of Christ's epiphany. Have a wonderful evening and a wonderful year. And I send you my thanks and my love.